Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Lee Tkachuk, and I'm the owner of Keystrokes Medical Transcription Service, and I'm also a professional speaker. Now, it's been an up and down business, and you'll learn why and things that you can avoid that I didn't avoid. We were awarded the Inc. 500 and 5,000 fastest growing companies in America list 7 times, which was a record breaker. We were awarded in 2004, 2005, 2006, 7, 9, 10, and 11. And we grew the company to about $18 million in revenues. However, we were so focused on that top line, on the revenues, that we ignored the bottom line, the profits. And we were so proud to be part of those lists. We displayed the awards in our office. We brought them with us to trade shows. We just reminded everybody how successful we were. When the truth is, we really weren't. We were an $18 million company, as I said, with almost 1,000 employees and 43 people in our actual office, with the rest working remotely. We spent money like there was no end to it, that it was a bottomless checking account. If someone wanted something, even a special pen, we let them get it. We had extravagant Christmas parties with bonuses. We visited our customers with a team instead of just one person. We would bring them out for fancy dinners. We would fly first class, stay in 5-star hotels, and really just spent the money as it came in, which sounds crazy, but it's very easy to do. And we took every class you can imagine online. If somebody said, oh, just put it on your credit card, we did. And we had credit card bills of $200,000 a month that we just paid off. It was easy at that point. Well, one of the things that we did is we went to every trade show and conference in healthcare, and we spent tons of money on expensive raffles. We actually gave away cruises as our raffle prizes. We would go to these shows and get more business, but it was primarily radiology. I'm going to fast forward a couple of years to 2011, and the bottom fell out. Within a 6-month period of time, radiology, which was 80% of our business, disappeared. We were replaced by speech recognition, similar to Siri. And we went from 18 million to 3.5 million like that. Unfortunately, we were still spending like we were an $18 million company. We were paying people that were still on the books for really not doing anything. I had 6 people in accounting when we actually only needed 1, maybe 2. We had 4 people, in HR. We only needed 1. It was just, we were overstaffed and underfunded. We just thought that this was a big bubble that was never going to pop, but it did. And it was a wake-up call. We had to go backwards and basically start from scratch, because as our revenues were declining and we were still spending at that level, we accumulated a lot of debt. Everyone wanted to give us money, and they wanted to give us a lot of money, so we took it. Unfortunately, when your revenues drop like that, you can't afford the things that you used to be able to afford. And you need to nip that in the butt right away. What we didn't pay attention to was the bottom line, our profit margin. Instead, we were focused on just if money came in, we could spend it. It was there. And by the time we laid off most of our staff, we were broke. Not just cash poor, but truly broke and up to debt up to our eyeballs. I still had a 7-figure business, but it was worthless, and we could just not keep up with everything. We had to do something we had not done before, which was we had to look at every account to make sure they were profitable. We had to lower pay rates across the board, which was not good for morale, trust me, and as you can imagine. And we had to budget and watch our pennies, something that was nearly impossible with the amount of debt we had accumulated. I started speaking more, because as I mentioned, I'm a professional speaker, just to bring in money to pay my personal bills, which were substantial, but that took time away from my business. So I turned speaking into a business. Which was great, but Keystrokes was still struggling. We were having difficulty making payroll, and checks were late, sometimes up to 2 weeks. I still don't know why my staff stayed with me, to be honest. And I was losing some employees, which led to customers being unhappy, so we lost more customers, and it was basically a nightmare. So instead of giving up, we started treating the business as it should have been treated in the first place, with budgets in place and constant questioning of every decision. And this is what we should have done from the start, and this is what you need to focus on: cash flow and the bottom line. Now, this is directed at both service businesses and product businesses. The bottom line is so important. The revenues really don't mean anything except for your pride and maybe the levels you can do things at. So some of the things that I wish I had known before all this happened are these 7 things. Profitability of every sale. It might be great to produce and sell 100 items at $100 each, you made $1,000, but either there should be a profit of at least 20% or you need to raise your rates. What does it really cost to produce and sell your product? What expenses go into that cost? Can any be lowered? If not, raising rates is the only way to go. It's not fun to bring in $1,000 if you spent $1,200 to bring that money in. It's just not sustainable. Sticking together. Hire wisely. Only hire who you truly need someone to fill a spot. I had, like I said, 6 people in accounting, only needed 2. The people in HR only needed 1. I had 2 personal assistants because I was that important in my own head. And it just was too much. So hire very wisely. Don't hire someone until you actually need them because you can't do it yourself anymore. And don't hire several people all at once. It does become a bit of a nightmare. Friends and family. I can't stress this enough, but do not hire your friends and family. It does not work in the majority of cases. It causes problems with jealousy because you're obviously making a lot more money than they are. It causes problems with they know your personal business and your business, and it makes it very awkward for family parties, social gatherings, etc. Because now these people that are your friends and family work for you. It puts a whole different dynamic into things. I know that a lot of people think, well, I can trust them. These are the right people to bring in, but it doesn't always work. I have a large tax bill right now because my sister was in accounting. I don't mean to call her out, but she's not on here, so I can do that. And it was mostly because I had hired family and thought, I can trust this person, I can give them whatever. I can also pay them more than they're actually worth. So right along those lines, find out what the going salaries are. If you are hiring somebody in a clerical position, that doesn't mean they're going to make $80,000 a year or $100,000 a year. A lot of times we do that because it is our friends and family. But check out salaries. Find out what's reasonable in your area for those positions before you hire. Don't go after everything. Number 4 is don't go after everything that's bright and shiny. It might be great to have a big, huge office with every bell and whistle and everything in there that you could possibly imagine. But if it doesn't make sense, it just doesn't make sense. I'm going to use a great example. We have this copier that we pay $1,600 a month for. We lease it with $1 buyout at the end. I still have 3 years left on this. It does hole punching and copying and scanning and stapling and collating and has every paper size you can imagine filled to the brim. We have never used any of the functions except for copying and scanning, which would have been substantially less. But you don't need the bright and shiny. Another example is we would provide lunch for our employees. No one comes to work expecting to get lunch for free. And we did that, not once in a great while, but every day. We would bring food in for our employees. You don't need the bright and shiny. You don't need to impress anyone, and you certainly don't need to spend more money than you should be. Don't purchase anything until you absolutely need it. I have enough specialty paper, unused binders, and promotional materials to last me the next 10 years, and I'll probably never use them up even then because we're no longer doing trade shows or conferences. We have pens, specialty pens that are actually going, the ink is running out of them because we ordered so many of them. Because, oh, look at this, you get a discount if you order 10,000 instead of just 300, which is what we probably actually needed. So don't just purchase something just to purchase it unless you absolutely need it. Another thing is analyze often. Not just the cost of goods and services, but the little things like I said, the pens, the staplers, all of that. And just because now something new comes out or somebody offers you an upgrade doesn't mean that you have to take it. It doesn't mean that you need it. Be careful what you're doing education-wise. It's real easy, again, to do the bright and shiny and say, this person's going to take me to a 7-figure business and put it on your credit card. It doesn't make sense unless you're in a place to do that. Don't spend it just to spend it. Don't take classes just to take classes. And then keep meticulous financial records. You'll need this for taxes and for tracking expenses and sales. So, like I said, instead of 6 people in accounting, we're down to 0. I do QuickBooks, and I give it to my bookkeeper once every quarter, and she figures everything out, and then I have a tax accountant. At one point, I had a CFO that was making $300,000 a year. Really just watch that bottom line. Revenues are exciting. Sales are sexy, like Haley said. They really are, but that doesn't mean that that's your business. If you have a business that isn't profitable, you really don't have a business, you have a hobby. So make sure that you are watching the bottom line, make sure that you're watching those expenses, and just enjoy the profits rather than sending them out the window. So my company right now may not be close to $20 million a year in revenues, not even close, but we're more profitable now than we were at the time that we were at that level, just by following these 7 steps. And they might not seem like much, but together they will make you profitable and happy. And there, I cut it down.
Unbelievable, just amazing. Like, these are like those huge warnings, like the don't hire several people at once. I've made that mistake. The, spending money, not keeping track of how profitable every single client is. It is such an important thing. Thank you.
My biggest client was our least profitable. In fact, we were upside down on them.
Really?
Yes, and here we thought this is this great customer. They're $650,000 a year. They pay on time. We were losing about $75,000 a year on them.
Wow. So how long did it take you to figure out that you were losing that much money on that client?
When we started analyzing, we went through every client and figured everything out, everything that goes into it, the staffing, the taxes, absolutely everything. And it took us about 6 months to get through all of the clients and all of our expenses and to turn it around.
How did you...
It can happen a lot quicker if you're smaller.
Yeah. How did you start tracking your time for, like the staffing hours that were going into clients and stuff?
We literally kept a time clock.
Mm-hmm.
And in the time clock, they can write, like our accounting staff would say, that day she worked on collection calls. My transcriptionist, which would be per account, we would literally, we're on production, so we could say, we're producing this many lines, we're paying this many lines, we're charging this many lines.
Yeah.
So you really have to look at every facet of it, and then take your overhead, your office space, your electric, your internet, absolutely everything, and divide that by the number of customers you have. And that's a good way to figure out if your customers are profitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, that can be really jarring. I've had that exact same thing in my own business. So. And
then it's hard to tell a customer, we're either raising your rates or we're canceling our contract. We're executing that termination clause.
Yeah.
That's very hard to do.
Yeah.
Our customers, for the most part, were very accepting of that because, I could explain that we're just raising our rates this year because of this. So for the most part, our customers were understanding of that. But let's face it, especially in the technology field, people expect things to be cheaper, not more expensive now, as things advance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very difficult discussion to have. Lowering salaries was huge for us, and we did lose people because of it. But I was paying way too much for way too little.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I've been there and done that. Yeah. And this is one of the hardest things to go from being an employee to being an employer. A lot of times people think that they are worth a lot more than they are, and they don't really realize that the business owner actually has to turn a multiplier of whatever you're able, if I'm paying you $15 an hour, I need to be able to charge the client $30 an hour because that's what covers my overhead.
Right. And it's hard, especially if you have friends and family, to explain that, my sister coming into this said she wanted $100,000 a year. She was an accountant. I thought, that sounds reasonable. She's more of a $60,000 a year accountant.
Mm-hmm.
She loved it.
Yeah. We have a question here posted. Can you please repeat the last sentence? Do a monthly Zoom thing, schedule time for sales to calculate the profitability of customers. So I think you're conflagrating the two things. So to calculate profitability of customers, can you talk about how you're calculating profitability?
Yes, ours is very cut and dry because we are medical transcription. So it's production based. So anything that we produce, we charge for. So it was very simple to do that. We could say this is what we're paying out in salaries to our transcriptionists versus this is what we're charging our customers, and you just subtract the two, and then you take off the overhead after that.
Yeah. So.
And you have to figure in your time too. Your time is valuable. What is your time worth? Or if you're making a $100 item and you're spending 100 hours doing it, you're making $1 an hour.
Right. And that's a good point too, because a lot of times as the owner of the business, we don't tend to calculate our time that it took to do whatever into the product, or we're not counting what our salary, any kind of a salary into the whole, like what is the overhead cost. So the overhead cost needs to include the owner's salary and any admin costs and those types of things as well.
Yes. And little things that you don't think about, your internet costs. Those spread out. If you have 30 customers and you're spending $60 a month, that costs $2 per customer.
Mm-hmm.
And it adds up, and it adds up quickly.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, we all know as business owners, we spend a lot of time. We don't just, clock in at 9 o'clock and leave at 5 o'clock, for the most part. We tend to work a lot of hours. We have to figure those hours in and adjust our rates accordingly, our pricing and rates.
Absolutely, yeah. And it can be really startlingly easy just to spend like massive amounts of money and not even know where the money went.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wish I could go backwards and be at that level that we were at and save.
Yeah.
We can't go backwards. So we basically started over.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at least you had that opportunity to start over again.
Right. We still had a lot of customers and a lot of employees, so it was easy for us to do that. But if you're making something, if you have a product, that can be harder to turn that around because there's so much that goes into it. Your cost of goods sold is fixed and variable at the same time, depending on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So budget. Just like you do in your private life, you have to do in your business life. You have to have a budget, or if you don't have a plan, you have nothing to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I love this so much. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this and accelerating our timeline. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you all for doing this. So let's give Lee a heart and a round of thanks for doing this and sharing that hard, cold reality of doing business, the things that we don't really talk about much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.